Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us again on the programme. You have been here for almost 5 years now, since 2019. Relations with the UK are currently at an all-time low. Do you personally feel ineffective?
Ineffective, an interesting thing. No, I'm just about more than 4 years here, and it was not very effective years because we did have pandemics for 2 years, and this was ineffective, of course, in terms of communication. But I have to say that in the end of 2021, we did have a rise which I was inspired with, a rise in different fields, including also trade and economics, science, and all the others. But sadly, it has been ruined after the events of the spring of February 2022. And that, of course, bothers me, because we did have several hundred years of full-scale relationship, mutually beneficial, and it has been ruined by the British government momentarily and nearly 400% in all the fields, which is bad, of course, not only for us.
They would say it was Russia who ruined the relationship because of the invasion and the war in Ukraine.
Invasion had a long history. It is more than 10 years of diplomatic efforts didn't lead that. As for the ruining of relationship, all decisions has been taken by British government. We only responded to that.
Most recently, Russia's defense attaché has been expelled from the UK, accused of spying. Would you say that has also added to ruining relations?
It's a funny story which I have no explanation to. The attaché, military attaché, he is in this building. He is one person only. He cannot do anything about this. The pretext was absolutely false. It's some kind of fire in the eastern London suburbs, anything, whatever it is. But the result is that Britain has expelled our Russian attaché, as well as we have done. And by that, Britain has ruined relationship, a mill-to-mill relationship, which existed for 90 years. 90 years. We nearly celebrated 100 years of this relationship.
So despite this, as you say, almost 100-year relationship, why would they now accuse Russia of spying or using British soil for its spying purposes? In fact, taking away diplomatic status from Russia's own properties, accusing those spaces of being used for spying.
Well, it's a crazy idea of doing this. They have done a lot of damage to it. Britain is perfectly aware that none of this building has been used for any purposes but for living of the diplomats, I can assure you, as well as our premises out of London. We have a summer camp now over there for the children, and they are happy to be there because they are out of London for some time. The immunity that has been left from our building, of course, it is a unprecedented step. I think it is very damaging. We do not yet know what is going to follow to that, but it is detrimental for the relationship, and of course, it will not remain unanswered.
Are you questioning Britain's intelligence gathering? I mean, they have managed to get this from somewhere. They wouldn't just expel a defense attaché for no reason.
They did it for no reason. It is just to. I'm not aware yet what were the reasons we have been, but we have had an agreement that each country has one person over there, and that is all. So expelling a defense attaché means cutting off military relationship, and I'm not sure that we will be eager to re-establish it quickly. No other country, even NATO country, neither the United States, has done it. Recently, the defense minister of United States decided to call our defense minister to discuss some things, but I'm not sure that our defense minister will take up a telephone just to talk to British defense minister.
But can you guarantee that Russian properties here in the UK are not used for spying purposes?
I can guarantee that, absolutely.
I want to talk about the upcoming elections here, because Russia has been accused of election interference. I mean, it's been accused in 2016 of interfering in the US elections. Now there are investigations by journalists that Russia is interfering in the upcoming UK elections. Your response to that?
My response, yes, I read this story. It's a story that some Australians have discovered that in Nigeria they have set up some boats, and Vietnamese are listening to these boats. Do you think that this really can influence elections in United Kingdom? My view is that the Conservative Party is quickly losing its electorate and its chances for the future. And it is now trying to grab anything. And even these false stories, which has nothing to do with realities, are now put on the surface. An attempt to attract some, at least, votes in a desperate situation.
The 5 coordinated Facebook pages that the Australian Broadcasting Corporation says Russia is influencing have been spouting, they say, Kremlin talking points and expressing support for Nigel Farage's Reform UK party. So it's not about the Conservative Party, it's about spouting support for Nigel Farage's party.
No, we do not see any point in supporting anyone here in these elections, because first of all, the program of the Labourist Party does not deviate from the program of the Conservatives at all. It is all the same. In the foreign policy, you do not have see any difference. As for Nigel Farage, I have never seen him in person. I have read his program. His program is also to increase defense spendings to 2.5%. As for his explanation for the current crisis, it is only partial, because it is not only NATO enlargement has damaged and brought us to this crisis, but mainly it is discrimination of the Russian population and the war that Ukraine has started to wage against Russia and the Russian-speaking population over there. That was the main reason, as well as NATO enlargement, which is also damaging for that.
What do you make of, because you've mentioned Nigel Farage's comments, I mean, he has said that, of course, Vladimir Putin is at fault for invading Ukraine. He's described it as immoral and indefensible. But he's also said that the war was a consequence of the EU and NATO expansion. He has said, we have provoked the war. How do you respond to his comments?
It is just a repetition of what I have said. So this is a partial explanation, because there are two sides of it. One is the expansion of NATO in the first place, because it is adversarial organization to us.
So you believe what Nigel Farage said is correct?
Second part, which is not there, is that it is extreme, that is prohibition of the Russian language in Ukraine, on which 60% of Ukrainians were speaking before the conflict. And it is a discrimination and offensive against Russians living over there and the Russian population and Russia itself. It is an attempt to start a large-scale offensive against Lugansk and Donetsk over there. These are main reasons.
But I want to specifically ask you about the comments that Nigel Farage has made.
I have done this.
No, I know, but
Would you like to ask me for the third time?
Yeah, I want you to be specific, because he has said it's a consequence of EU and NATO expansion, and we, as in the West, have provoked this war. Your response to Nigel Farage?
Yes, I would say that in that point, mainly who has provoked this war, it is the wrong policy that has been taken by leaders of the West, who decided that they can do whatever they want. It is just, there is an American expression, my way or no way. So they decided that they can do everything without taking into account interests of the others. But what is good for America, for the United States, is not possible in Europe. Europe is a much more complicated system. And we did have a net of European security in the beginning of 90s, in the middle of 90s, and further on, which taken into account all interests of countries living there, including Russia, of course. So but at one point, it was decided that they can ignore totally interests of Russia, and they started this movement towards the east, and now Ukraine is at the border of Russia, and NATO is an adversarial organization. Of course, we have to take measures against that.
Do you agree with Nigel Farage and what he's saying?
No, I cannot, of course, because he has criticized Putin as well. So as ambassador, I cannot criticize my president.
You cannot criticize your president, sure. And the Prime Minister has said that what Nigel Farage said was wrong. It was completely wrong. It plays into Putin's hand. Do you think Nigel Farage is playing into Vladimir Putin's hand?
I think it is Rishi Sunak who is trying to get out of this situation, because he does not explain anything. He is just label someone at all. But the issue of Rishi Sunak is easy, because he now has to bring this policy of supporting Ukraine with everything until the end, and then he will have this hot potato, he will throw it to the laborers, and he will just vanish like Boris Johnson has done.
But is Nigel Farage's explanation to you, does that make sense to you?
Yes, we are going in the rounds. I have said already in the beginning that in some of these points are correct, that how many? 9 waves of enlargement of NATO, against which we protested very hardly and trying to show that it is detrimental for European security, has done, and now it has led us to where we stand. It has led us to the crisis, major crisis in Europe.
So then that takes me back to Rishi Sunak's point that Nigel Farage, by making these sorts of remarks, plays into Vladimir Putin's hand. Do you think that Vladimir Putin welcomes these sorts of comments by leaders?
No, I hardly imagine that he knows the name at all.
So it's not something that Vladimir Putin is currently even thinking about?
I don't think so, no.
I want to ask you about a Sky News investigation. I'm just going to pull this investigation up. It's found that despite a UK ban on the import of Russian liquefied natural gas, Britain's service sectors are playing a significant role in facilitating the growing trade of LNG from Siberia to European ports. So despite the sanctions, and you and I have spoken about the impact of the sanctions on Russia in the past, despite these Western sanctions, we are still seeing the purchase of Russian gas by the Europeans. Your response to that?
Well, I briefly have seen this article this morning. It speaks not only of purchasing Russian gas, but also purchasing by Europe Russian oil, Russian coal, and all of that stuff. So think about sanctions. Of course, it is bad and not pleasant. It is very irritating when each round of sanctions has been announced. We have now about 2,500 people under sanctions. But damage to the economics is nearly null. Damage to our policy, we didn't change our policy line at all. Speaking about economics, of course, business is finding ways how to deal with the sanctions. We have started to restructure our industry, and it has brought us quite a success, because the growth, the GDP growth of last year was 3.6%. We expect approximately same ciphers this year. What about Britain? Where is it growing? It's around plus minus some 0.5%. Same as in Germany, same as in France, probably at least slightly better. So where is the damage of sanctions? Definitely it is damaging the originators of the sanctions, because they are illegal. The illegal sanctions has been done only by the United Nations. Illegal sanctions are damaging mostly to those originators.
Well, the sanctions have been placed, but as our investigation has found, that there are Britain's service sectors are playing a significant role in facilitating the sale of Russian gas into Europe. So these British companies aren't necessarily doing anything illegal, but these sanctions are being worked around. You know, what is your response to that? The fact that Europe is still dependent and reliant on Russian gas?
I am not aware about the factual situation of it. And I can assure you that those who are trading gas and oil, they will never tell the price of it. I have some friends over there, but they will never discover me whatever they are doing and how they are doing and what, because it's a big secret for them how it is. But if the point that Europe is dependent a lot in this world on gas, oil, and other natural products, and metals especially, rare metals, very much others, not only resources but technologies. So that's true. absolutely, and it is now shown on the world economic stage. You know that the World Bank yesterday has raised the rating of Russian income from the middle one to the highest one. This is one of the results of what is happening yesterday.
What do you call these sanctions then? The West has opened its toolbox, imposed sanctions over 2 years on Russia, and yet we're still seeing the sale of Russian gas to Europe.
The goal of the sanctions was, first of all, to spoil normal life of Russians. So they will say that Putin is wrong and that we will need a revolt. The second point of sanctions was to damage Russian economy as much as possible. The third point was to change the political course of it. So none of these goals has been reached by the sanctions.
And billions made to fund the war effort against Ukraine. So by purchasing the gas, in a way, by Russia making billions as a result, they're funding their war effort.
It's just a small portion of the budget which is measured now in trillions of whatever it is, euros, dollars, or pounds, or rubles. The budget is big. The most important that we have a very low debt. Debt is about 20%. The British debt, foreign debt, is more about 100%.
But just tell me, why is Russia still selling its gas then to Europe? Why not stop?
Why not to sell it?
Well, why not stop? If you feel you're not just at war with Ukraine, you're at war with the West because the West is supplying weapons to Ukraine, why not stop selling your gas to Europe? It will push inflation prices up, for example. You could have, your foot on Europe's neck if you wanted to.
No, we don't.
Why the dependence? Is it a codependence?
We are not so greedy as Europe it is.
But why continue selling the gas and keeping European homes warm if you don't need the money?
There is no ideology in it. We are selling it, most of our gas, we are selling to China, to India, to South Korea, and as well as to
15% of it's still going to Europe.
Perhaps, yes. Why not? Why not if they are buying? So the businessmen. This is pure business. I think there's no politics. We did not sanction Europe for purchasing anything from us.
Is it because you're still dependent on their billions for your war, for your own economy?
No. It is incomparable things. The income that we have got internally, income that we have got, that we are getting from the trade with the countries of global south is now incomparable with the income that we are getting from Europe. We have, in a trade with Britain, it is now reduced by 98%. Only 2% has left of what has been. Is it good for us? It is nothing for us, but it is bad for Britain because they are trying to get out.
But you're still keeping European homes warm. Cost of living has improved as a result of. It's an uncomfortable truth,
a bit.
But that is happening. If you wanted to punish the West, why not stop those sales? Because you still need Western money.
Have you ever seen that we have said that we would like to punish West with something like that?
Well,
West is selling now weapon, is not selling but delivering weapon to Ukraine, and this is bad because it is a war of attrition, but the attrition of Ukraine. The continuation of the conflict in Ukraine, it's attrition of Ukraine in economical sense, in a sense of human resources. The longer it goes, the worse our situation is for Ukraine, not for us, because economically we stand absolutely independent. Morale is high. People believe into the president, and it has been shown during the elections. So,
if Vladimir Putin truly had, and we've spoken about the elections in the past, 87% approval rating, and he got that kind of result during the election as well. Why crack down on protests? Why crack down on the media? Why silence those voices of dissent within Russia if morale is so high?
Let us deal it one by one. Yes, he did not crack on the media. Why do you think so? What kind of media he cracked on?
A woman holds a banner on the television saying no war, and she's arrested for example. Protesters in the street are arrested for protesting against the war, or if they express concern about the death of Alexei Navalny.
An interesting thing, it is coming back to Nigel Farage. He has expressed some point of view which deviates from the point of view of the government, and he was criticized from all the sides.
He also may become an MP after Wednesday, after
no one knows.
Thursday.
He tried 4 times.
but he
I was
might
amazed.
this time, and I mean,
I was
that
amazed,
is
really.
democracy
I
playing
was amazed
itself out.
how strong censorship is in this country, because there is no possibility for any alternative view, just to put a hand out of it and to say something.
He can say what he likes. People can respond to him. He may become an MP after the election.
Yes.
That is not something that is possible
we
in
have
Russia.
a lot of people. No, it is absolutely possibility we have, because I'm reading much more than you in our internet and all the others. I know that people is freely expressing, and a lot of people is. That depends. If you speak up only just against something what is happening politically, and it is different if you would like to call a demonstration and go against the powers. Of course, powers has to defend themselves. So it is not that bad.
But
just go to the country and you look at it yourself. What is happening?
But if you talk about morale being high, demonstrators can't come out onto the streets. They're taken away. You know, Vladimir Karamurza, for example, remains in prison. Alexei Navalny is dead.
Let's do it one by one.
These are people who speak up against.
Vladimir Karamurza has done a lot of speaking out against our country politics and the others. He was traveling around the United States with lectures, totally making in black all our countries and all the others, speaking about politics. Then he has come to Russia to do the same, to organize the organized protest, organized movement against that. And of course it was against the law, and he just serving his terms.
He's been poisoned multiple times as well.
Karamurza poisons. Okay, I'm going to abstain from this discussion. You can be poisoned during lunch or whatever it is. So I will going to abstain from that. He is in good health right now, as I understand. He has seen British diplomats recently, and so they are taking care of him.
And journalists like Evan Gershkovich, for example, who remain in a Russian prison for working for the Wall Street Journal.
Because he was spying. It is not a secret that some journalists all around the world, let it be, I will not name the names of the countries, that journalists are used for spying. So Gershkovich has been used for spying in the heart of our, it's in Sverdlovsk, Yekaterinburg, which is producing a lot of military equipment, including tanks. He was caught on the spot doing his job.
You're not using him as some kind of political pawn to release prisoners?
This is not a question to me, it's a question to those who are dealing with that.
I just want to go back to your point about freedom, and elections proved that Vladimir Putin is very popular and morale is very high. And yet, like I said, journalists from the West are frightened when they're in Russia because of the laws that have been imposed as a result of speaking out against the war in Ukraine, for example, protesting against the war in Ukraine, political prisoners who remain in prison, and those who have left the country as a result of the war as well.
Okay, Russian journalists here, they are deprived of using banks. They are followed every time, and they have a lot of limitation in these countries. Let's abandon all of that. I'm just standing for this. Let's make journalists in all of our countries free. But first step should be done perhaps here, because conditions of our journalists living here are terrible, of course. As for others, journalists that are around, we have a lot of them in our country. Mr. Rosenberg, whom you know, he continues to do his job, and we are doing also press tour for journalists, because your profession, you should provide unbiased approach to the subjects, and we appreciate very much if journalists, some of them, yes, they are taking this unbiased situation, but most of them are continuing this line that Ukraine should defeat Russia. What have we to do in this case? First of all, it is unrealistic totally. Second, it is absolutely wrong. And this is not where events are going to.
I want to ask about your President Vladimir Putin's recent trip to North Korea, the first one he's made since the year 2000. Why was that trip necessary?
Why not? This is our neighbor with whom we did maintain relations for, I do not know, for perhaps more than with Britain, hundreds and hundreds of years. Yes, some sanctions has been taken against North Korean ballistic and nuclear issues because they are developing it, but they are outdated totally, and we do not see any reason why not to reconsider this issue in the United Nations, and we are going to raise this question.
Because you're dependent on their weapons as well now?
Not at all it is. This is a country that has, I think, 15 million of people, not that much. Yes, they have strong army and all of that, but we cannot be dependent on them at all.
But Russia is now looking for partners and friends elsewhere, and we've talked about Iran, China, for example, a friendship with no bounds, and North Korea now. You say that the focus is on the global south. And I guess it takes me back to the investigation that we've done. You know, that yes, on the one hand, despite the sanctions, Europe is still taking the gas of Russia. And yet Russia continues to sell that gas, you know. And so you know, despite you looking for relations elsewhere and trading with the global south, you still, on some level, do you feel dependent on the West as well?
You know, speaking about that, I can give you an example, because one of the policies that has been against us, directed against us, it is not only sanctions, but an attempt to isolate us from the other world. An isolation that was an idea that was promoted by Britain especially, and by other Western countries. But I can tell you that I have held a reception here on our National Day, 12th of June, and I have had here ambassadors and chargés d'affaires of 57 countries. You know the names? What about isolation? Where it is? It is not true. So isolation in the global world, it is probably possible about the smaller countries, but Russia is so big that you cannot neither isolate, neither set it under sanctions, or make it a sort of outcast of the world, which the UK is eager to do. It is very detrimental for UK itself.
Donald Trump has said, should he return to power, he can end this war between Ukraine and Russia in 24 hours. What do you think about that?
Hardly. First of all, he should be in the office. Second is that a lot of efforts should be done to do this. And that depends on what kind of terms it is going to happen. Now, you know that a lot of attention is now given to the draft agreement that has been nearly concluded between Russia and Ukraine early 2022 in Istanbul. So that was a good platform, probably. But now you have including Donald Trump, he should be realistic about the real situation on the ground. And negotiations will be long, I can assure you, because they are going to include several elements, and they, of course, will include the situation on the ground. And we are not going to stop offensive actions. It's wrong to think that there is a stalemate over there. There is no freeze. We are attacking now and advancing now from 7 to 8 directions, from east to the west, and we are gaining terrains. Now it is still operational, I would say tactical and operational, but it will grow into more serious actions pretty soon.
What does a peace deal then look like if you're saying you're gaining more and more territory?
At the moment, it is, as our president has expressed it recently, peace deal should include several elements. First, Ukraine should be not member of NATO, non-nuclear, nuclear-free. Of course, it should be demilitarized in a sense of the level of weapons should be diminished. Rights of Russians should be reestablished totally. It should be a friendly nation for us, and the territorial gains should be recognized, of course.
I mean, we've had this conversation around, you know, whether Ukraine can be part of NATO or not. As a sovereign state, they should be able to make the choices they want to make.
Of course, it is the kind of a slogan does exist like that, but this choice being part of NATO, if NATO will be a friendly organization to us, then it's a different thing. But we know NATO has done offensive. It's destroyed Serbia and part of Kosovo, destroyed Serbia in different parts, set aside Kosovo. It has made attacks in Libya, Iraq, and all of that. We do not believe in a peaceful NATO at all. We believe that NATO is a dangerous organization.
Russia has had its fair share of wars and conflicts, from Chechnya to, Syria, to various other places that they have engaged in an ongoing conflicts.
Syria is a good example, because when we have come to Syria to help Syria, it was about 80% of Syria has been already under ISIL. 80%. Right now, it is just a small portion of land where ISIL is still dominant. Syria is recovering. Without us, it will be different. Absolutely, it will be a hell, I would say.
But it's not like Russia has been an innocent bystander when it has come to global conflicts. The point is that earlier in our interview, you talked about we're not at war with the West, and we're not about punishing the West. We will continue to sell our gas to them. And yet you ask for Ukraine to not be a part of NATO as part of a peace agreement.
Yes. Yeah,
so do you see hypocrisy in that?
No, not at all. Not at all. It is one. Yes, of course, the West can believe in its exclusiveness and believe it is always right and all that stuff, whatever they do, as I have said, my way or no way. But as speaking about Russia, it is different. You should take into account Russian interests and Russian security interests here in the West and in the UK. And you cannot just go whatever you do. So we have had a good system, by the way, some 10 years ago. We had relations not only with the countries on bilateral side, we had also good relations with the institutions, with European Union, with NATO. I worked 10 years inside the headquarters of NATO as a Russian diplomat trying to establish good relationship. We have had normal OSCE. I was ambassador with the OSCE when it was still playing a good pacifying role in the conflicts, in the different conflicts, but all this has been ruined, I'm afraid. And this is not us, but this is European Union who decided to stop relationship with us.
Well, because of the war.
Yeah, not because of the war.
Because of the invasion of Ukraine.
This Estonian lady, who is now being selected as a high representative of the Kaja Kallas, she is now saying, so it is her who said that Germany and France should not talk to Russia. She has raised her voice and she is proud of it. She was one who ruined consensus in the European Union when big countries wanted to have a dialogue. She has got supporters from other Baltic countries, perhaps from Poland, I'm not sure, yes. But she has played a great damaging role to the re-establishment of dialogue in which we could have done it without war or without any crisis. We could have a good diplomatic dialogue, but it's in vain now.
Do you think that Russia's focus on Ukraine has meant that security, for example, in Russia has deteriorated? We have seen terrorist attacks in Moscow, for example, just a few months ago, where over 100 people were killed in a terrorist attack. The finger of blame from one quarters was pointed at Ukraine, even though the United States offered intelligence to Russia that perhaps there would be a terrorist attack on these concert halls, which was ignored by Russia. Do you think Russia's suspicion is so deep of the West that even when they are given intelligence like that, which could improve diplomatic relations, it's ignored to the detriment of your people?
I'm not aware about all details, but I can say, as far as I understand, intelligence was very general in that sense. So it was just a prediction that something might happen any place.
They were quite specific about the details.
No. There was no specific as far as I'm aware of. So there was just a general raise of alert. It happens sometime.
And they offered it. They could have not, but they offered it to Russia. Not
specifying place, not specifying anything about that, but this is details which are known to the special services, not to me. Second, about the Ukrainian connection, it was clear because these people who has done it, they tried to escape to Ukraine, not to Belarus or to China. They tried to escape to Ukraine,
and yet,
of course,
you know,
it raises suspicions, of course, it is.
And yet,
the investigation is going on. It is. Results will be announced.
Because the terrorist media, you know, the media of many of these Islamist groups actually pointed the finger of blame on ISIS-K, for example, and yet Russia wanted to come out and say it was Ukraine.
Investigation is going on. This Islamist group, they are numerous, of course. We do not know whether this one is a fake or it was a real one who stands behind it and all of that. But the obvious issue that they are trying to escape to Ukraine, they were supposed to be received in Ukraine by some people, and of course it raises suspicions.
And finally, sir, I mean, you know, you have been a diplomat for the bulk of your career. What would you like to see happen, you know, in the years to come, whether it's the war in Ukraine or relations with the West?
It's a good question, finally. Yeah, of course, what is going to happen in the coming years, I think it will be two very serious settlements. One is the settlement with Ukraine. I do not know when and how. That depends on a lot of factors. That depends mainly on the realistic approach by the new leaders that are now emerging in Europe to the real situation on the ground. And second, it will be a wider arrangement of security in Eurasia, on Eurasian continent. And this is most important because we need to come to an arrangement. Before that, it was Euro-Atlantic security that included Russia with all these institutional links. Unfortunately, it didn't work. So we need now a wider arrangement. It is still, I will say, about a vague idea, but we start to work on that. It should include all countries in Eurasian, not only from Lisbon until the Far East, as we have seen before, but probably something different. But at least a conversation has started. We already talked to some capitals. I did have already conversation here in London with the Foreign Office, initial one. Of course, they are not ready for that, I fully understand. But I think that it is, as diplomats, we have to look not only for tomorrow, as most of people are doing here. We have to see how it will look in 5, 10 years, 10 years, 15 years, and so on.
You just mentioned new leaders emerging. Do you think some of these far-right groups will work to the benefit of Russia, for example?
These are not far-rights. In fact, it is just political parties, which has been chosen by protest voting. I will even say that even here in Britain, it is a protest voting than a support of any of the two parties. It will be a one-party system pretty soon, as they say. But as most of the electorate is saying, and I have seen a cipher, it is 77% do not believe that it will be better under Labour's. 77%, it's a high figure, it is, so people is protesting. So. Far-right people, these parties are more, I would say, pro-national, pro-country. They think not about, in terms of Europe should fight Russia and all that stuff, and why. They are more realistic about the general situation because, as Foreign Minister of Germany the day before yesterday, she has said that our first national interest is Ukraine. This is absolutely silly. The first national interest of Germany is Germany, and German life, German economy, German population. Why Ukraine? So I hope that your future government will take care more about its electorate, about Britain itself, taking it out from this deep trouble, economical trouble.
Before I end, I guess the worry is that should there be a takeover of Ukraine, Russia will push ahead into the rest of Europe.
Yeah. It's a big deception of all the people here. It is, we have no ambition at all. We have to deal with Ukrainian government, with nationalism of Ukrainian. We have to defend Russian people living there in Ukraine, and we have no ambition at all in trying to attack anyone else in Europe because it will be a all-out war, which is unrealistic, I will say.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Yalda.
Thank you.